You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin de Chleirigh. I'm flying solo. For this interview, Paul is working on his day job today. Our guest for this video is Independent Ireland's County Councillor, Cllr De Courcy. Councillor De Courcy was a first-time candidate in June 2024 in the local elections here in Ireland. Councillor De Courcy received a huge 972 first preference votes on the first count. Councillor De Courcy was elected with 1,461 votes in the Clondalkin Local Electoral Area, LEA, for South Dublin County Council. Councillor Cllr De Courcy, you are very, very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup.
Thank you, Roisin. Great to be here.
Councillor De Courcy, if we could start up, you had massive first preference votes of 900 and was it 97?
92, yeah.
That's a large first preference votes for a first-time candidate.
I know, and I think at the time, because I'd never run before and I had never really been involved in politics before, that until afterwards, when I kind of sat down and thought about it, I was like, yeah, that was actually a very significant first preference vote. So so it was great. I mean, I literally decided to run about 6 weeks before the election, and I ran on two main things. The first was, I suppose the actual catalyst, the proverbial straw, was the fact that they had plans to pedestrianise Clondalkin village. Now, if you don't know Clondalkin, it's a small little village. It has a round tower, so it's been around a while, and obviously there's a lot of small, and it's already one way, and so that was just had people up in arms because there's a lot of elderly people in the area, and even if you're young with kids, wherever you are, if you don't want to walk, you shouldn't have to walk. If you want to be able to use your car, you can use your car. So we collected well over 1,000 signatures, and I was like, look, I said, so that's what I was saying when I was on the doors. If people don't want the village pedestrianised, then the village should not be pedestrianised. And then the second big thing, obviously, was the immigration issue, because if I feel like I live in IPAS centre, there's IPAs all around where we are. So they were the two things I ran on, and I think it resonated with people. So thankfully, obviously it resonated with enough people to get me elected.
So I want to we'll talk about the IPAS and the City West in just a little moment. And you talked about the two main issues that you ran on. So I'm curious to understand, and it's an introduction to our viewers, what first motivated you to decide to run as a local representative in the local elections?
I think and what I said to people on the doors is like, I'm fed up. I'm fed up with the way the country is being run. I'm fed up with everybody who has any genuine concerns about anything, like, whether it is immigration, whether it's the transgender ideology, whether it's kind of the climate hysteria, like that, that you're just called a nasty name. And, like nothing up until I think the end of the when the Troika came in and the end of the bailout, I think up until about that time, I just always assumed that Irish politicians were working for the good of the Irish people. I always voted, and I'd kind of you kind of maybe changed my parties a couple of times over the years, depending on what people were saying. But I mean, up until then, I always just assumed that Irish people elected to the Dáil and the Seanad were actually working for the Irish people who elected them. But then after that, I suddenly started to think, no, hang on. And then when you had, the push for the abortion referendum and the push for the marriage referendum, I was like, is this really what the Irish people want? And it got even more extreme during COVID and during lockdown. Like, it clearly, everything we were being told, we now know so much of it was a lie. So I became more and more convinced that whatever the government was doing was not actually for the good of the Irish people and not for their benefit. It was for the benefit of whoever else, the EU or other people, and won't go into all that. So I just decided, in April last year, I'm just going to run. I'm just going to throw my hat in the ring and see if people want to vote for me. So that's what I genuinely said to people at the doors. Look, I have never had any political aspirations, but I'm just fed up. So thankfully, people believe me and they voted for me. So yeah, that got me over the line, which was great.
And was the 2024 referendums last March and 2024, was that also a contributing factor?
It was actually, yeah, thank you for reminding. Yeah, because that was, and I think that gave people the confidence to realize actually just because the government says something, that isn't the way it's got to be. You're right, actually, that did give people a big confidence boost, and that would have actually also given me the kind of the confidence to feel, okay, people may not be saying it out loud, but actually they're not happy. And so, you know, if you give people an option to vote for somebody who's genuinely saying, okay, this is not okay the way things are, then maybe we'll get elected. So thankfully I did.
And the no vote was a resounding no.
No, yes, thankfully, yes.
Yeah, I was canvassing. I even went up to Dublin and canvassed for the no on the streets of Dublin.
Oh, great. Oh, good for you.
Yeah, in Mary Street, Grafton Street, and even out in Dunleary as well, and other areas, and canvassed for no. You know, it's like I was out, no, you must vote no. What are you voting for?
And I think, yeah, I think the vast majority of people are like, what are you playing at? Like, you know, you wasted 20 million euro on this campaign that nobody wanted, you know. And so anyway, and I think that was a definite catalyst in the tide starting to turn, that people are like, okay, hang on, no, the government are not, you know, they're not behind us. They don't have our backs. They're actually trying to push something that the Irish people don't want. So thankfully, we have a constitution that required them to go to the people, and thankfully, the people said, no, thanks.
Yeah. A very resounding no. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
government was the first time, I think, it shook the government up, I think, and all the other political parties, because it was only a very few people in the door that and a few senators that actually stood up and said they were voting no, and it was the wrong, there shouldn't have been a referendum. Very few people.
Absolutely. And even like people like the National Women's Council of Ireland, like, why would you call for yes vote? Why would you want to eliminate women from the Constitution? So, you know, so it's, yeah, no, it really was. It was a good, and sure, Leo Varadkar resigned not long after that, didn't he? He didn't stay around for long after that. So yeah, so no, it was a good, gave him a bit of a shaking up. They need more of a shaking up. A lot more, but hey, we'll take what we can for now.
And the NGOs need a good shake-up as well, with 37,000 of them all pushing for a yes vote. And I sort of thought, well, the National Women's Council, they're not listening to women and anything. They're pushing down, they're telling women what to think and how to feel and how to act instead of listening. So I think they have a big disconnect, and like most of the NGOs and charities, I'm being told either vote no or you lose funding.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
So moving on, so I have my questions all here, but I can't see even with Specsavers. So you were newly elected as a county councillor, as we said in the intro. How have you settled in as a local political representative?
Well, it's been good. I suppose this year is a bit more relaxing than last year, because last year was obviously running in the local, and then I knew I was going to run in the general. So we were kind of, you know, from the time I got elected, and even if I hadn't got elected, I would have run in the general. But it's a great platform to have, to be a councillor, you know, to be before running in the general. So I was kind of waiting for that all year. So I think after that, and I kind of had a bit of a sleep, and, you know, kind of got my head around things. I'm enjoying it much more now, like, as I've settled in well. So last year was great, and I mean, I wouldn't have not run, but you have that in the back of your mind all the time. We know there's a general election coming up. So and I definitely doubled my first preference vote, and I didn't get elected, and that was fine, because I'm actually quite happy to still be in the council. I feel like I'm able to sort of still affect change. Like, they're still trying to, the number of times they've come in to try and pedestrianize the village again, you know, and I think a lot of villages are suddenly finding that actually their main street is being pedestrianised, and a lot of that is due to the council following this kind of climate agenda, that thinking that if you don't pedestrianize your village, somehow, you know, the world is going to end, you know, and this is the thing, and so thankfully I've kind of been able to be strong on that from the beginning, because that was one of the things I got elected on. And so any effort to actually stop people driving through the village, I've been like, no, this is not going ahead. And so, you know, that I'm glad I've been in a position to do that, you know, because that is a really big thing. And interestingly, I was up in Enniskillen in I think May, and we were just walking down the main street, and I was like, there were 5 banks on the main street. The main street was buzzing, but, you know, there were parking bays on both sides of the road, and you could actually drive down. And so, you know, that's what keeps a town alive. The access into the town, whether it's Dublin City or whether it's any town or village around the country, we have to be able to drive into the town. You have to, if you have kids, if you're picking up groceries, whatever it is, like, you have to be able to drive, park close by, get in and out, because it's probably going to be lashing rain for one of the journeys, communities, and so that's what keeps towns alive. And it's nice to have the green spaces, and it's lovely to have the, kind of the plaza areas or whatever, but that's nice on a dry day where you want to sit outside, not on the, and it's a fabulously dry day today, but I mean, we can have 7 months where you don't get a dry day. So anyway, so that's one of the things that I'm thankful that I've been able to do. So if you are, wondering why suddenly your town or your village is being closed off to traffic, that's the local council, and that's the climate agenda that's coming from the government, also coming from the EU. So yeah, so just in case you are in that situation, yeah.
Yeah, it's like here in Kilkenny, we have the one-way system in our high streets and surrounding streets, and it really does take the away from the local economy. But also at that, I'll also add in that it doesn't really help older people. If older people want to go into the high street, they have to park the car, and then how do they get down and be part of that local community? Which is where the older people and even people with disabilities, or even with women with young mothers as well, it just takes away that community spirit, which is, and the high streets and surrounding streets is the DNA of every village, town, and even the city in Ireland.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. They're so integral. And also, it's so much nicer just to drive through and see the buzz and see the people, and that there's people living there, there's people working there. And, that's what we need. We need to maintain that. So we need to, if you can, if you're in a position to find out whether that's planned for your area, and make sure you contact your councillors and push back against that.
Yeah. So you are a county councillor with Independent Ireland. I'm curious, Independent Ireland is it's a really growing new political party. It's been very vocal, it's growing, and a strong opposition in the Dáil Éireann, where some people would have said that there was no opposition for the last 5 years, apart from maybe another few TDs in the Dáil. But Independent Ireland has become very vocal. So I'm curious, and maybe the listeners are, is to tell us why that you ran for Independent Ireland.
I suppose I just they literally had only kind of started as a party not long before I decided to run, and I saw something online, and I had a look at their website, and I just like the policies, like obviously, and I know I'm a city girl, but I mean, from when I was in school, the whole thing was like, this country is like, our two main industries are agriculture and tourism. Tourism, I believe, is the biggest employer in the state, and agriculture is the backbone of the country. Like, if we lose those, which we are losing, because of the current government policies, like, well, what do we have? Where are we left? We're left with, like, the multinational companies who are probably going to leave in the next 18 months anyway, so we need to, we need to hold that, we need to maintain that. So obviously they would be very strong on that sort of thing, being, a lot of rural councillors and TDs, but then also just their policies on immigration, their policies on neutrality, their policies on, different things, education, like that it should be education, not indoctrination. And spoke with a few people, and just, they were happy with me, and I was happy with them. So, and since kind of I've got to know all the TDs, and Michael Collins, in all fairness, has been a great support, especially with relation to City West, which I know we'll get to, when raising it in the Dáil. And so I really feel like it's a really good fit, even though I didn't really obviously know them. I never met any of them before I decided to run, but it just sometimes you just kind of know, and then the more you get to know people, you realize, okay, no, this is a good fit for me. So
you followed your intuition, and that was, and they had the core values of your core community, your core values, your community values, and your political values.
Exactly, yeah.
Really. So now we're going on to local issues with you in your local electoral area of Clondalkin, and the IPAS, in particular, City West Hotel, which is in your constituency, and which the government purchased. Tell us about that. And you were very vocal. You were on national television talking about it. So tell us why that is so important to your political values and representing your voters and constituents.
Well, I suppose for City West particularly, it's the permanency of it. All the IPA centres that have opened up everywhere over the country, like, they're all supposed to be temporary. It's like temporary emergency accommodation, temporary provision, temporary. And even though some of them have been open for 4 or 5 years now, we're still told it's temporary. So, there is an expectation that at some stage they will be undone as an IPA centre and go back to whatever they were being before, most of them being hotels, B&Bs, etc. But City West being purchased by the state. Now the contracts still haven't been signed, so it's definitely not a done deal. But City West being purchased by the state would just mean that in 20 years' time, it's still a permanent IPA centre. And it won't just be that it'll be Ukrainian families living there, it'll actually be a transient hub. So it'll be people coming in, maybe destroy their passports, coming across the border from the north, like, oh, here I'm fleeing persecution, because life is really tough in Bristol or whatever, and then also people who are being deported. So people who are being deported from the state. So it's going to be, and it's currently holds at least 2,300 people. I think there's more people
Wow.
living than that, yeah. But they will clearly want to double it in size because they want to use it as a purpose-built facility. So like if you've got the land, and they do have the land, they've got loads of land, car parking spaces, and then land as well. So they clearly want to double that in size. So basically you're looking at a village like Cllr, which is about 5,000 people. And you've got that same number of transient, let's not lie, vast majority of military aged migrant men living in this small community, and again, not like even settling there and staying there for 2 or 3 years. They'll be in and out, and they'll be transitioned through. So I think it's the permanency of it that is really upsetting people. And City West is a nice village, it's got some lovely houses. It's obviously become very built up in the last few years because it's got more and more apartment blocks, but it's a lovely sleepy village. And also the people of Rathcoole who are right beside it, and the people who live in City West as well. So it affects people all over the country because everybody knew City West Hotel. It's the biggest conference centre, I understand, in the country, and so there were like Ardèches there. There's been everything there. Like the night before the Ryder Cup, I believe there was a dinner was held there. So it's been a fabulous facility, not just for the people of Dublin Midwest and South Dublin, but the whole country. It's a great amenity, and this would mean it's permanently taken from not just the people of Cllr. They will be the ones who are affected most, but also everybody in the country who would ever have been there for a competition or just for dinner or for a conference or anything. Like there's so many things it was used for.
And also Kilkenny, it'd be very well known to Kilkenny when they used to win all the All Irelands. They had this celebratory
Oh,
evening in the City West Hotel. Also
yeah.
very important, I think, is you mentioned that the men of military age, but there's an awful lot of people are very concerned about the single men coming over. They're not, and they're walking around in groups. And also the fact too that where are their wives, where are their families? If they're escaping persecution, where are their families? Why do they not bring their wives and children's mothers and grandmothers with them? And also the fact is there is no Garda vetting, there is no security checks. We all have to get Garda vetting if we do anything. But where
Absolutely.
is there Garda vetting all being in one place? And that is a big concern for what the Irish Political Roundup are hearing from everybody that we speak to on the ground.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It really is. And it's like even Micheál Martin said in the Dáil before in January, earlier in this year, like the vast majority of these are economic migrants. And you probably saw the video of this woman in Letterkenny who recorded this African guy like saying, he was here because he was being persecuted, for being gay. And then he's like talks about his wife and his kids, and he wants to bring them over, and he thinks Ireland is great because he's getting everything for free. So, let's not fool ourselves. The vast majority of these people are here because they think they're going to get a free ride. They're going to be able to bring their families over. So that's why they're leaving their wives and their mums and their grannies and their aunts and their uncles, because they think they're going to be able to bring them in. And a lot of times, unfortunately, they are able to bring them in. They're leaving the IPA system. They're getting put on the homeless list. They're getting housed, very quickly. I speak to lots of people who are 4, 5, 8, 10, 12 years on a housing list, and they're not able to get homes. But then you've got people coming into the country who are getting housed pretty quickly. So there's something very underhanded going on there. I haven't been able to get statistics or specific figures on that, but I do know from listening to other councillors in other areas like that, it's a significant number of people coming into the country, coming out of the IPA system, and then they're getting housing pretty quickly. So that's again very concerning. Why is that being allowed to happen?
no one has issue of anybody fleeing war or persecution. You would give somebody a safe haven, a shelter from the storm, but for somebody who is genuine. But when you see groups of men coming in and very fit, very have really well, let's say, well toned muscles, are working out in the gym with the military, with the military walk and stance and
Yeah.
everything else. People are very concerned about that. That's what we're hearing. And so plus there's no security check. Who are they? What do they have a criminal background in their own country? There's no passports, no identification. That is quite concerning. And I can understand that as a woman, a divorced woman now living on my own, and my children, one lives half an hour away from me in Wales, the daughter lives in Cork. So it is concerning, you do sort of go, okay, well, why are they walking around in clusters? Why are they, where's their wives? And I think that's a big thing. And also going into communities where there's children and families and vulnerable people.
Yeah.
So also housing lists, you mentioned the housing. Is the housing list coming up, issues coming up at your doors, and with your voters?
Well, it is, and again, like when I was canvassing for the local and the general, like it's kind of the number of people, like when I would talk about young people trying to find a room, like living with mum and dad, and they kind of be pointing upstairs, like like I have one, I have two, I have three upstairs, and I remember speaking with one lady, and she'd one child, and he had gone to, I think it was Australia or New Zealand, like he'd had to leave, and she's just heartbroken. I mean, you have an expectation that you raise your family and then they grow up, and if they want to live here, that they will be able to have a home, because that's the way it's always been. And another lady has three children living abroad, and so the number of people I spoke to who either had a child or multiple children living upstairs, now adult children, not like 4-year-olds, but adults children, or else their children had to leave, and have no hope and expectation of coming home, and that's heartbreaking. That you're, and again, if people want to leave, that's fine. Lots of people traveled. I traveled when I was younger, but a lot of people travel and want to come back. They want to bring their kids home, they want to raise their children here, and they're simply not able to do it. So housing is a massive issue. 500,000 young adults living in their parents' homes, and now was it Simon or Mihal came out and said, oh well, you can build a bungalow, build a showroom in the back garden, and it's like it's so insulting, and it's so taking the mick, like that this is suddenly the solution. Oh yeah, let's relax the planning rules for that, so you can you can have your 1-bedroom studio in the back garden, so that your parents can still see everything that you're doing. The other thing that
they've no privacy, and the parents want privacy as well, and sometimes what the parents don't know doesn't kill the parents.
But also the whole, when you grow up and you move out and suddenly you have to pay an electricity bill. And, I remember when I got my first mobile phone back in the 90s, like my boss at the time had to sign for it, so, like all these things that you don't, like you have to, proof of address, and just the responsibility of paying bills, and the responsibility of like cleaning up after yourself, and because it's like when you live at home, there's sort of an expectation, with the best will in the world, that you still have mum and dad to do that. And so there's a real hindering of people's kind of that aspect of growing up and becoming independent, and sort of the satisfaction of running your own home however you choose to run it, whether it's a 1-bed apartment or a 5-bed mansion. I think that's very, very damaging as well to young people, that you don't get over that hurdle, of whether you're renting or whether you buy, whatever you do, that you're actually moving out and having that responsibility that you simply don't have when you live with mum and dad, because we know what Irish mammies are like. There's no getting away from that fact. Like, they pick up after everyone, and that's grand. But so I think that's very damaging as well, and that's the government are choosing to ignore the negative effect of that. So housing is a major issue. One of my big issues is yes, we do need to build more homes, but like, how many tens of thousands of people do we have, like the Joseph Puska, like his family, that are living off the state and not contributing, that have come in from an EU country, they're living off the state, Like how many are there? Who knows? We don't know. Like, you know, that Riyadh, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Bouchaka or something, the man who stabbed the children in Parnell Street. He was living in the country 20 years. I don't think he'd ever worked a day in his life. And he was given Irish citizenship. So he was living off the state, granted citizenship, and then goes and how does he repay, you know, our generosity? He stabs children and triggers the riots, you know. So how many thousands, possibly thousands of homes, but thousands of people are actually living off the state in this country who are not Irish and shouldn't be here. I think 33% of long-term unemployed are non-nationals. Why are they getting employment benefits? You know, there's a lot of people who are being funded to stay in the state who I don't necessarily believe should be here. If you're here, you're contributing, you're working, and you're working in a job that is genuinely needed, that's fine. But I mean, there was 116,000 PPS numbers granted in 2014 and only 17,000 work permits. So there's almost 100,000 people coming into the state. Some of them are, you know, possibly born here, but like a significant number of people are coming into the country, whether they're spouses or children of people who need PPS numbers, who need visas to come in here. So the PPS numbers are being given, but the visas, there's 17,000 visas being given. So there's a lot of other people coming in along with those people who are being given visas, and they're obviously dependents or whatever. So you've got families coming in when one person is working. And again, there's something very wrong with that. Why are these jobs not being given to Irish people? The vast majority of them are easily, you know, covered by Irish people. And then they've got families coming in. So we have a serious housing crisis, but a lot of it is just because we have a massive amount of inward migration for people who don't really need to be here, because Irish people should be doing the jobs that they're currently doing.
And, you know, my daughter went to Australia, Melbourne last year, and I thought, oh my God, I hope she doesn't like it. I hope she hates it. You know, I wanted to come back because she's a doctor. So this is her second degree, right? She was a radiographer and always missed out in the HPAT by 5 points and then 1 point, and then did radiography and then postgrad medicine. And there were nearly about 17 grand for student fees just for postgrad medicine. So she went back there and then she went to Melbourne. How many doctors and nurses, teachers, engineers, and even guards all leaving Ireland, going to Australia and not coming back? And I received this text message from a doctor the other day, and this is what he said. I'm going to get this up because I think it's important. And he's actually sent it to me yesterday. I'll just get this now because it's really important. This is why doctors, young doctors, highly educated doctors are not coming back, which would help our healthcare system. And if I can get it now, which I can't seem to get it, but he said, why should I come back when we're paying 50% tax? Fuel has gone up. And he even said even chocolate's gone up. You know, and even down to, I'm looking for this now as I speak, and also the fact that, you know, all the money that they're saving in Australia with the Australian dollar and the exchange rate, they're losing half of the money in the exchange rate of what they've worked for.
Yeah.
And so why would they come back? And that's what they're saying. But we need to, you know, and to help to sort out our healthcare system, we certainly do need to get that. We need to bring back our highly educated children that they have financially invested here in Ireland, and then they're leaving, and yet we're it sounds awful, but we're importing other so-called professionals who may not have the education and up the standard to the skill set of what Ireland's highly educated children have. This is what he said. We have inflation. It's insane. The price of butter has gone up 45%. So has chocolate. Fuel 50%. The average family in Ireland now has to spend €6,000 more on groceries than they did 4 years ago. And now we're caught in the position of our savings to bring home for Australian dollars is worthless. Bringing your worthlessness bringing your worthless Australian dollars and convert it to euros only to spend on goods and services with a 50% price hike in comparison of 4 years.
Yeah.
And this is from a doctor.
Yep. I know. No, it is. And it's like and you know, like we also need our carpenters back and our electricians
All
and
our
our painters
trade.
and our hairdressers and, you know, the people who work in creches and, like, you know, everybody that's grown up here and trained here and sort of assume they might travel but come home, you know, and who suddenly, you know, they can't come home because it's just ridiculously expensive to live and almost impossible to find property to buy. Yeah.
People want to come home.
They do, they do.
But they
And I
can't.
mean, not everybody does, and that's fine. But I
Yeah.
mean, if you want to come home, you know, then you should be able to. Yeah, I think that's really important. Yeah.
And that they would help with our, especially as you said, tradespeople, bring them back home, give people the reason to come back home, ask them what will bring them home. And I'm sure the Irish people wouldn't mind saying, okay, that's where the money is going, in bringing back our Irish families, our children back home to help build Ireland, help decrease the housing issue and the water issue, because we're going to need people to help out, sort out, as Independent Ireland mentioned, it was Deputy Ken O'Flynn mentioned, for Cork alone, it's going to take 99 years to replace all the water pipes. I mean,
I know, it's insane, isn't it? You know, it's to me, it's really frustrating that the government seems to focus all their efforts on, you know, non-nationals and then looking after them and making sure they have everything. But like nothing is being done to fix our infrastructure, you know, our sewage pipes, our water, our, you know, all these things that we, and also, you know, our culture. When you think about last year when they brought out that the syllabus, you know, when we saw the picture of the diddly eye, you know, the mum and dad and the kids.
disgusting. It was disgusting. It was
Exhausting.
pornographic.
It was, and the more, like, you know, like we didn't come from a massively Irish cultural family, like, you know, kind of when we were growing up in the 70s and 80s, there wasn't a massive, you know, because I suppose with all the troubles and everything, and you didn't wave the Irish flag or whatever, you know, that was, you know, because it was, you know, for whatever reason. But I mean, now you see more and more that our culture is being stripped away. We need to preserve it and we need to maintain it because it's our culture. It's unique to us. We have, you know, and for right or wrong, if we lose it, it's gone. It's never going to come back. You'll have an Irish American version, you'll have an Irish Australia version, but you won't have the Irish heritage, the Irish culture, the Irish history. And I think it's really incumbent on us to maintain it for future generations, because if we lose it, they won't be able to get it back. You know, it's like it kind of waned, you know, over the last 1,000 years up and down. But I mean, there was never such a massive influx of non-native people into the country that would sort of wash it away. That was always there simmering below the surface and maintained. And now when you've just got, look at the demographic change, and it's nothing against people are people, but like they don't necessarily, I believe, have a right to live here. We need to maintain our culture. We need to, you know, for ourselves, but also for people who want to come back, like, you know, Irish Americans and other people who want to come back and visit the country and spend money here and go golfing and you know, find their roots, whether it's in Donegal or Mayo or whatever, you know. That, I think that's really important. And I think we're realizing it now more and more, that this is actually something that we need to hold on to it, because if you lose it, it's gone and it's not coming back.
And also, even even where I'm from the north, I'm from Derry. Up north, we had the flag issue. You know, you couldn't be proud. You know, if you had a tricolour, you couldn't. You know, we had them issues.
Yeah.
And I came down south, and I thought, oh my God, I can at least be proud of my flag. I don't have to be worried about, you know, the tricolour or the school uniforms or anything else. And my son joined the Irish Defence Forces. My son wears the tricolour on his left arm because it's close to the heart.
Yeah.
He swears an oath, and swore an oath to defend the nation and protect the citizens. And they salute the national flag every morning on parade so. And yet you have politicians, you have even Micheál Martin, a lot of politicians saying, if you wave the Irish flag, you're far right. Or even want to have the flag, you know, you're far right. Or even to fly the flag in outside your home, you're far right. Well, 6,000 members of our defence forces, are they far right?
Yeah, I know, I know. It's the hypocrisy, and it's like they've got themselves in such a muddle that they're, it's like keep digging, because you're only making it worse, And but again, I think really in the last year, in the last 18 months, the mood has really shifted, and people who were afraid, the number of people I spoke to on the doors who'd start with, I'm not a, and I don't even like saying the words,
Yeah,
like I'm not a this or that, like,
yeah.
but. And I'm like, don't even start with that. Don't even apologize. Just say how you feel, and it's okay. It's okay to feel how you feel. Like, how you feel is how you feel. Like, so let's not try and but I mean, they do keep digging this thing, but the more they go, the worse they're making it, because people are just be like, no, this is not okay. We want our country back. We want our culture back. We want our children to be able to be here. I want our grandchildren to be able to come home, and we want to preserve this little Ireland that that we love and we've grown up in, and that we believe is worth preserving.
Yeah, and I was at a conference last month, a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to a gentleman, and we're just talking. I lived in Africa and Saudi Arabia, and he says, "Oh, you're a global citizen." And I looked at him and I said, "Man, well, I wouldn't class myself as a global citizen. I'm very proud of my culture and my family, and my heritage is coming from Red Hugh O'Neill. My grandmother was a direct line." I said, "So I'm very, very proud of our Irish culture." And I said, "But so I wouldn't, I have no issues with anyone else calling themselves a global citizen, but I'm proud of my heritage and my culture and our literature, our music, and everything." And he just looked at me and I said, "We may agree to disagree, I said, but I'm not going to say I'm not proud to be Irish. It would be an insult to my ancestors and to my fellow citizens and our culture." And that, we started off too about as well, and then we'll move on to the other issues that you mentioned briefly before we went on to our pride in our national flag and our culture, is the indoctrination of children in our school and the educational system. I've seen the books, and you've probably seen the books, where then you had politicians who were saying, "Oh, there's nothing to, in the books." You only had to look at the books that was being, and I know teachers 2 years ago or 3 years ago that left Ireland and they were young teachers that didn't want to explain or teach this indoctrination to younger children, and parents did not want their children being indoctrinated in the schools either. And it wasn't up. A lot of parents are saying it's not up for us to take our children out of the class because that's putting a distinction between the children in the school. But they were like pornography.
Yeah. It's funny, one of my friends has a daughter in sixth class or first year, I can't remember, but anyway, but they've been taking her out. No, it's first year, she's in first year, so they've been taking her out, and it's like it's an hour's round trip, like, because she doesn't go to school in the town they live in, but actually some of her friends, so this little first year, some of her friends were telling her, "You're really lucky, because what we're being told is icky." Like, even these poor girls that are being exposed to this stuff, they're like, it's because it's creepy, and you just like, you're in a room with like boys and girls, and the teacher's talking about things, and you're like, this is, so they're actually saying to her, "You're really lucky to not be in the class, because you don't have to listen to that." Like, so it's funny, even these young kids, they're like, and some of them might think it's cool or whatever, but a lot of them, you instinctively know, like, "Oh, this is not what it's like, you should be learning about, what's the capital of France, and like some theorems or whatever, trigonometry, and like different things that you be starting to learn, chemistry and whatever, but not that." So it's very disturbing. Yeah.
And I always be talking to young ones. I always love to know what teenagers are thinking about, and what they're saying and what they're doing. And because I always think you get to know what the next generation is going to come up with, or what their issues are, especially as a life coach and as my role as in the media producer and presenter. But they always said the last couple of years, and I've been listening to them, that they were fed up with the gender ideology and the flags all in the schools. They were saying that 2 or 3 years ago. So I think, but education, the Department of Education and politicians and NGOs are, again, not listening, not just to the parents, but to the children as well. They're forcing it on society. And that does not sit well as what they found out in the referendum. You also were talking a cross-border health scheme. I know your leader, Deputy Michael Collins, has been very vocal and very active in that. Talk to us about that.
Well, it's like, you always hear about people who are like waiting on a waiting list, and especially for something like your hip or your knee where you're in constant pain, like 3, 4, 5 years, and even if it's not something that big. We had a meeting yesterday in the Clayton Hotel in Liffey Valley, and there was a lady who had she's just a problem with her tear ducts, and she just like it's like a 15-minute operation, and she's kind of on a 2-year waiting list. So basically, what it's the cross-border health scheme is like that you can leave the jurisdiction, get your operation in another jurisdiction, and come back, and the HSC will refund you. So for a knee and a hip at the moment, it's 100% reimbursement. For cataracts, it's about, I think, about 50%. So, but instead of going to like Spain or Romania or somewhere where you have to get on a plane, where you're in a country with, speak a different language, you can actually just go up the north. So it's Kingsbridge Private Hospital in Belfast who do the surgery. So it's well, from Dublin, it's only 2 hours up the road. But I know Michael Collins has been busing people up. He does these Belfast or blind buses, because I think it's a 7-hour trip from where he is, up to Belfast. So he's been basically helping people like, get their cataracts resolved for 6 or 7 years now, which is amazing. So that's how I found out about it. So we had an open day in the Louis Fitzgerald there in April, and I think about 12 people. So that's only like 12 weeks ago. About 12 people have now had their surgery. So whether it was hip or knee or whatever else, they've gone up, they've had their surgery, they're post-op. So in the summer, they're now recovering. Another 7 or 8 are kind of booked in. So you're literally going from waiting years to waiting weeks or even days. If it's cataracts, you can literally go up in a couple of days and get it done. It's so quick, and it's almost shocking to think that, like, instead of being told like, well, 2028, it's like, by the end of August you can have the operation done. So we had the open day in the Louis Fitzgerald, as I said, in April, and then we had an open day in the Clayton Hotel in Liffey Valley yesterday. So just to let people know, I was on the radio there a couple of weeks ago as well, just talking about it. So just to try and raise awareness, that let people know that if you are in pain, if you're on a waiting list and you're being told it's going to be 3 or 4 years. I was chatting with one guy, I think his mom, I don't know whether it was her knee or her hip initially, that she was waiting 3 or 4 years for that, and then that got so bad that she had to get the other hip done, and then she had to get a third operation done on a knee. So she's had to have 3 operations, whereas if she'd been able to have it as soon as it started giving problems, she would only have had to have 1. So it's also preventing degeneration and further problems as these things, as you wait for something that's debilitating and negatively affecting your life. So it's a great scheme. It's as I said, it's handy going to Belfast because you're not leaving the country. Obviously everybody speaks English, and if you need, like, if there are for some reason complications and you need to go back up, it's only a short journey. Whereas if something happens and we've heard a few stories as well about people getting operations on the continent, and then Irish doctors won't touch them. And you can kind of understand the doctors. It's like, it's not their responsibility because they didn't perform, and they are obviously, they have to look after themselves as well. So, but at least if it's Belfast, you can, if you need to go back up, you can go back up, and thankfully that's a very rare occurrence, because it's like the Blackrock Clinic or something similar. It's kind of a 5-star private hotel, so it seems to be a very nice place. I haven't been up yet. I hope to go up soon.
And an awful lot of our young doctors as well. Some travel up to the Ulster University of Ulster to study in Queens for medicine too. So there's a good cross border, and a lot of them will come down. You've also been very vocal on gender balance and how Dublin businesses encourage also to adopt gender diversity and inclusion in promoting non-nationals over Irish nationals who may be more qualified but are not getting the jobs. Talk to us about that.
So that's interesting. So yeah, so it's funny, one of the things as a councillor is like you get loads of emails, and sometimes you open your inbox, you're like, But anyway, so I got one, the one from Dublin Chamber there maybe 3 months ago. And so by the time I read it, and they were just, it was just, they had polled some of the businesses, that they would work with, and 200 businesses had responded. So they were talking obviously about the potential tariffs. The housing is a big issue, obviously, with people, trying to retain staff. But then one of the other things they were talking about was like their DEI policies. And so I like 40, close to 50% of businesses kind of have an active DEI policy. So I was a bit like, so I emailed them back, and I said I would be concerned about this. I said, to be honest, I said, if I'm getting on a plane or if I'm going for an operation, I don't care what color of the skin of the person is. I don't care whether they're a man or a woman. I care that they're the best person to fly the plane, to perform the operation, or whatever. I said, it's really important that the best person is employed. Like it can't be based on some, demographic or some woke concept that, like, we have to make sure we have diversity of color in our workforce, and my big issue with it is not so much it's the gender quotas. I'm not a fan of
I'm
in the
not either.
legislation. I think it's like you should be elected on merit, and maybe a few women need a bit more encouragement to run, and that's one thing, and that's one thing that could be looked at. But I think possibly some men need to be encouraged to run as well. So I think that could probably be evened out. But this is a situation where Irish businesses are potentially hiring non-nationals above nationals just to meet some sort of fictitious diversity quota. Like, this is not America. We don't have a history of different ethnicities and different, ethnic groups living in the country. You're Celtic, you're Norman, you're Viking, you're Anglo. No, not that anybody admits that part, but like we have that, so we're all one happy family. Like, so we don't, you don't like hire a Celt over a Norman. That's not an issue. Like, it's the best person for the job. But so we have obviously people living here now who are coming from other parts of the world, and I think it's highly insulting and highly damaging to Irish people and young Irish people to think I might not get a job because I'm the wrong colour, or especially if you're a young Irish man, I might not get a job because I'm the wrong colour and I'm the wrong gender. So what I've been doing is I've written to all the electricity gas companies. I've written to all the big supermarkets, and I've written to who else have I written to? I'll think of it now in a second. Asking them 3 questions, asking them, do they have and I'm just looking at the nationality. It's not nothing to do with anything else. It's just like, do you have a kind of a quota for non-nationals, and would you hire a non-national over a national? With all things being equal, would they're both equally qualified? And would you hire a non-national over a national if the non-national is slightly less qualified, just to meet some sort of quota, for diversity? So I've only heard back from one company so far. I'm waiting to hear from the other. Oh, yeah, I went to all the transport for Ireland, like the Lewis, Dublin Bus Éireann, etc., Irish Rail. So I haven't had a response back from any, except for one who, in all fairness, got back to me quite quickly. So when I get that information, which hopefully I will be contacting them again if I don't get a reply. I will be letting people know, because I think it's shameful that companies would be put under pressure, and they're being put under pressure by all these activist groups to actually hire, someone from a different continent over an Irish person, just for what? Like.
Yeah.
Like, why are we doing this, and why are we negatively affecting the opportunity of a young person to get a decent job, to get on the ladder? Like, it's to me, it's shocking, and that needs to change. So I'll be going to my TDs again about that as well after I get the information, and hopefully pushing.
And also, it's a bit of a farce, because if they have all this diversity and inclusion, what about, as you mentioned before on the phone, travellers? What about people living with disabilities? What about single parents, mothers who I'm in the north, before when I was working in the north, a lot of the employers, if there was a woman who became a lone parent, they actually gave her working times from 10 to 2 so she could take the children to school and then be there to collect them after school. But in my opinion, if there was a real authentic, I hate that word, I think it's overused now and everything else, but if there was a real genuine diversity and inclusion policy, they would be also including people living with disabilities, as they need that for economic. They need that for because they are one of the cohorts that live in one poverty. There is even older people who want to work, and you've got ageism as well in that. So that would be included. And also travelers who want to go out and work, but they are being excluded for, I always say, for all this diversity, inclusion, and equality taglines and word salad, they are excluding the core people that really should be given the jobs under a priority under this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's interesting. So it's kind of and as I said, it hadn't really occurred to me until I got this email from Dublin Chamber and kind of read through it, and I was like, okay, that's a bit strange. And the more I thought about it, the more angry I got, because I was like, this is just wrong on every level, like, you know, and also because, like, especially for small businesses, they're being put under pressure to kind of spend money investing in this. It's like, and so many businesses are like financially really strapped, and then they're expected to kind of invest in this. It's like, why are we doing this? Why are we letting this happen? You know, so we just, and obviously one of the other things was going to talk about as well was just to encourage people to get involved, you know, like, I mean, as I said, I've never been involved in politics, never had really an awful lot of interest in it, but I mean, when you see what's happening in the country, we need to get into the councils, we need to take the councils back, we need to start putting pressure against the a climate agenda, against the woke ideologies, you know, like the Belgard Road, which is a main road connecting Tallaght to Clondalkin. It's very busy. It's currently like 2 lanes of traffic, and 1 bus lane, and there's a cycle lane as well. They want to actually, that before I got elected, the council agreed to make it a dual bicycle lane. So like you've got 2 lanes of bikes each way. And so you've reduced the traffic to 1 lane, which is just totally insane. It's a really, really busy artery, but it's one of the few that actually works well because it's 2 lanes of traffic. So we have to, and less than 4% of people going to work or school cycle in South Dublin, less than 4%, 2.something%. And then they want to make a dual carriageway of bike lanes both ways and get rid of one of the lanes for cars. So there's so much silly stuff going on just because there are these woke policies, and these ideologies have taken over the council, because normal people like you and me just thought, you know, why would we be involved? But we have to be involved. So, you know, really encourage people, like, either join a party, join Independent Ireland, or join another party if you feel like you better align with them. I think it's good being in a party, but just, you know, get involved, contact your councillors, find out where they stand on things, ask them what they're doing about this, ask them, again, if your roads are being pedestrianised, ask them why, and then let people know that you're not happy with this, and then consider running, because, you know, if we can take the councils back, you know, and we can kind of take the country back to a large extent, because we can bring back that common sense, like, no, we need to be able to drive because it's wet a lot of the time, you know.
And then the traffic congestion, if you've got cycle lanes that are not being used, and then you have the traffic congestion, and then you have more accidents, you have, and everything else that could happen. You might not even get there in time for your children to collect them from school, and then they're left waiting. And that's a health and safety and community risk.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you in a little bit about what you've learned as a county councillor, because I think that's really, we've talked about why you joined and why you went as a public representative and your votes, and then the issues coming up. And are there any, so then I want to talk to you about is what you have learned as a county councillor, because I think that's really important. But before we go there, any other issues that are coming up at the school gates, the coffee shops, in the supermarkets, or walking down your high street or surrounding streets?
Well, I mean, I suppose there's all the day-to-day, you know, like the potholes and that sort of thing. But I mean, people are really angry. People are, you know, really angry with what's happening in the government. They're really angry with the fact that, like, you know, they're €5 short for a fuel allowance, and some 20-year-old is coming in and getting, you know, a free medical card and a bus pass. You know, they're angry at, they feel like they've been working all their lives, they're doing their best for their families, they're paying their taxes, and that they're literally being, you know, railroaded over by, by people coming into the country and getting everything ahead of them or their family. So that there is an awful lot of anger out there. So as I said, there's the normal day-to-day stuff. It's like, why is there not a zebra crossing there, or so but that's kind of, and that's grand, that's normal council work, but there's an awful lot of anger simmering under the surface, and I think the last election, the reason possibly more people didn't get elected is sometimes it's better the devil, and it's like, until we have a proper opposition party that's actually saying, okay, well, we need to look after Irish people in their own homeland, we need to have good common sense policies. And I think coming up to the next general election, Independent Ireland will be really strong in that, because like you said, we're becoming very well known now, and we're bringing proper opposition, holding the government to account, which is what we're supposed to be doing. So you have to give people a reason to vote for you, and you have to give people a reason to change the party that they voted for, their dad voted for, their grandparents voted for, because it's sometimes it's very ingrained in us that we've always voted a certain way. So I would hope that kind of coming up to the next local and general elections, there would be that change. So there's a lot of anger under the surface, there's a lot of frustration, and especially with City West, like, people are just, they're really stressed out. The thought of like having this permanent IPA centre beside your home where your kids go to school, and where where you invest most of your money in your home, it's a very, very tough, challenging time for people.
And when they could put the City West into hotels for families, or even put it into accommodation for hospital or first responder guys, or even people who are coming home from Australia, bring everybody home, put them into nicer apartment blocks. What I'm told that houses are available, and give them accommodation to come home to. So, Councillor Linda De Courcy, what have you learnt? We were speaking on the phone, and you said you've learnt so much as a county councillor. So since you were elected on a really great first preference vote, and then a really good tallies then in the transfers, what have you learnt then from your first being elected this time last year to within your 12 months as a county councillor?
I've definitely learned that it's really important what happens in the council. And I mean, I paid very little attention, to be honest, to the council before. Like, I probably contacted councillors just a few times over the years for different things, but it's really important what goes on, because as I said, like, it's like there's so many far left people in, especially the 4 Dublin councils, like, and you can see it because you see they're all live streamed as whatever, so you can watch them and you can watch back, like, the things that are talked about that are totally irrelevant to what a council is supposed to do, and the policies that get passed, because there is very little conservative leaning voices, and even if there are, there's probably 3 or 4 people in South Dublin now that would be kind of conservative leaning. So we don't get to make the policies, we just get to object to them and kind of say, okay, well, actually, this is really not the best thing. But so what I've learned is councils are really important, and so councils affect, obviously, they, as I said, they do the things, they fix the roads and that sort of thing, they fix the lamps, they replace the light bulbs, and that's grand, that's kind of what you expect the council to do. But they're making cultural changes, and they're making all these other changes that I don't necessarily believe the councils should be doing, but that's because it's gone so far left, so you've got People Before Profit, you've got Social Democrats, you've got Sinn Féin, you've got the Independents, who are very left leaning, and then you've got Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael in the middle, so they're being swayed again, so like that, by that. So it's really important that we take our councils back. I think we need to flip the councils back to just common sense, just normal. Let's just focus on what we're supposed to be doing. Let's not be talking about Palestine. Why are we talking about Palestine in South Dublin County Council? Like, it's not helping anybody in the world except wasting the taxpayers' money, the people who voted us in, so there's a lot of irrelevant stuff going on. And in all fairness, there's a lot of good stuff the council do, and I don't want to, like, the parks are amazing. They do, they put a lot of summer activities on, there's kind of, adventure camps as well, and and fun days. So I don't want to in any way say that the council does not do important work, but the problem is it's been hijacked by the ideologically motivated groups, rather than people who are just like, okay, well, let's make sure the parks are great, let's make sure the roads are good, let's make sure the children have right zebra crossings getting to and from school, the stuff that you're supposed to do as a councillor. So I think that's one of the big things that I've learned a lot about the planning regulations as well, because obviously there's mosques operating in Lucan and Clondalkin without planning permission. So I've been learning about that and chasing that up, and we're still waiting for planning to actually get in and close them down. That takes a long time. That's another thing I've learned. These things take an awfully long time. So it's kind of probably 10 months now waiting for some of them, the enforcement orders, to be actually acted upon, but hopefully we will get them closed down, because they didn't even bother applying for planning. So that's a whole other story, maybe for another day. But yeah, so I suppose that's what I've learned, that it's very important who's in the council, and it's very important the attitude, and the mindset of the vast majority of the council. Like, are we doing the things that we're supposed to be doing, or are we getting involved in things that we're not supposed to be getting involved in?
And I'm also, I believe the county councillors are very, very, let's say, you don't get the appreciation that you deserve, or the recognition for the work that you do. County councillors, you do some county councillors, they tell Paul and myself, Roisin, we do as much work, if not more, than a TD, but we don't have a personal assistant, we don't have an office, we don't even have a printer. And so therefore we are doing everything ourselves. But also county councillors are very instrumental in Leinster House because of the relationship between county councillors and senators need the relationship with county councillors.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of councillors, like, they have other jobs, like the vast majority of councillors also have another job. So yeah, so they do work very hard. And again, I'm not in any way disparaging the work that councillors do, but it's just, as I said, it's the ideological capture that is causing people to spend too much time trying to change the mindsets of people. And that's not right. Like, we need to be just focusing on making, for my part, South Dublin a nice place for the people of South Dublin, like, making sure the roads are good,
the local people.
Exactly, like, and that people have the amenities and the services that they need. But yeah, no, and obviously the senators are really important as well, and we do need to work with them, and they work with us. So yeah.
And that's not sort of promoted enough or highlighted in the nationally, just how important local councillors are, the work that you do and what you do bring to the local communities, and how you can also get issues at local level brought up in the Shannon or the Doyle. And so it's really important. And too, as you said, that getting more people to run in the local elections and to represent your communities is an honor.
Yeah, it is. No, it really is. Yeah. No, I'm very privileged. I mean, I really appreciate everybody who voted for me and took a total chance, because, like, nobody knew who I was, Now you kind of have to walk around making sure you're smiling, because you kind of make sure you're always polite, and that's fine. And like, but yeah, no, I do appreciate the faith that you put in me,
Well, you had a resounding, let me get my notes again, 972 first preference votes. That's a lot for a first-time candidate. And then 1,461 votes when you were deemed elected. That was some trust. You were in your own life, you were a Pilates teacher, and you have a master's, and you work in the area of nutrition as well.
Yes, yeah. So I still teach Pilates. I kind of cut down my classes a bit, and I'm a nutritional therapist, so I still see people to help them, with their diet and with their health and stuff as well. So yeah.
So you're a really busy woman, and you've got the two jobs, and the county council, I know everybody talks about finances and money and waste, but county councillors it isn't something that you can live off on a full-time wage. You have to be able to work, or it isn't financially viable or possible to actually just work as a county councillor for one income.
Yeah, no, I mean, possibly some do, or maybe they have a partner or a spouse who works as well, like, so, but yeah, no, it's 30 grand a year. So, like, it's not a massive amount of money to live on, with the cost of everything.
Well, Councillor, Independent Ireland Councillor Cllr De Courcy, from Clondalkin in the South Dublin electoral area. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak to the Irish Political Roundup with me. I know Paul is raging he's not here with you to talk to you, but he's working his day job. And it's been an absolute pleasure. And please do keep in contact with us and keep us up to date with anything. And even if it's only a 5-minute video or 10-minute video, we're here to help get your message out there, like other county councillors, give you all a platform to be able to speak to your local communities, and also regional and national level, as well as what you're doing in your local area. So please do stay in touch.
I will definitely. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much indeed.